Conversations across time. 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 Conversations across time.
Good evening and welcome once again to Conversations Across Time. Those of you that tuned in last week will remember that this is in the Express studio because we are actually having a tutorial. And this ties in with what we have, our previous shows that had to do with the Supreme Court. So seated to my right and your left is Mark Hoffman, who is the Conversations Across Time historian, former history teacher, and someone that we appreciate his sense of history based upon what we are witnessing today, and perhaps we are reliving some things that Mark has been talking about.
It's good to be back, and I'll try not to be as pessimistic.
And so to my left and your right is Irv Madnick, and Irv Madnick is ever the trial attorney, and he is here in his own person, in his own personality, not as President Roosevelt or not as Earl Warren. He is just here as Irv Madnick, which is a big deal because he's quite well known and was a formidable defense counsel.
Welcome. You. I'm glad to be here. I'll try not to be too optimistic.
Okay.
So now we have an agreement from everyone. Mark, you're not going to be pessimistic. You're not going to be optimistic, so I don't know where that leaves me, because I am, as I think many of our audience members are wondering where we are and what the hell is going on. So for those of you that joined us last week, you know we were having a very heated conversation, and there were so many issues that came up having to do with the recent presidential election that happened in this country. And so I just want to throw it out because we thrive on controversy and we enjoy controversy. So in that, President Trump was not elected by a popular majority, in that he was placed in office by the actions of the Electoral College, and I think we pretty much agree that the Electoral College is with us to stay. So for all of those reasons and all of those considerations, are we beyond the looking at this presidential election with a view towards maybe some film history? And that would be, is Donald Trump a Manchurian candidate? He seems to be influenced a lot by Russia. I'm just throwing that out. What do you think? Anyone?
Well, let me just say this. I mean, there are a lot of things that point to that. I mean, his glorification of Putin during the election process is one thing, which was really strange. I mean, especially running on a Republican, wasn't running on a Republican platform, but for the Republicans, who were always very, very anti-Soviet Union and Russia. Secondly, there was evidence, of course, and that the DNC and Podesta were hacked, and all of that information came out. There's every reason to believe that the RNC was probably hacked too, and none of that came out. So
yes, if you're hacking one, why wouldn't you hack the other?
If for whatever reason, and the evidence also is that Russia was behind the hacking.
Yes.
So if Russia was behind the hacking, of course you put 1, 2, and 3 together, and it looks as if they tried to influence the election in favor of Trump. And of course Trump, who was glorifying Putin, makes it seem as if that he's in concert with Russia. So from a logical standpoint, you could say, yeah, the Manchurian candidate probably has something to do with it. I don't know that they doped him up or whatever, or brainwashed him when he was in Russia, or if he ever was there.
Well,
but if they did,
you have to have a brain to be washed.
That's true too. So, but anyway, yeah, I think that there's certainly an argument to be made on that behalf.
Yeah. The question, first of all, even as we are on the show, Trump denies the CIA report and the FBI report that the Russians hacked. He says it might have been some fat guy laying in a bed somewhere hacking, or it might have been the Chinese. But when 17 intelligence agencies have all agreed, and they come to agreement that it was hacked by the Russians, you have to answer, why did they release only the stuff from the Democratic National Committee and nothing from the RNC? Do they have information that would be damaging to President-elect Trump? Are they going to use it to blackmail? We know, as you said, Irv, that many of his policies go against the orthodoxy of the Republican Party and make no sense in terms of the history of American foreign policy, in terms of doing away with NATO,
Right.
in terms of it.
He sounded like an agent of Russia to me when he was talking about
Right,
it.
exactly. So
Right.
that's why Vivienne said it's the Manchurian candidate. And speaking with the president of Taiwan, that threw a monkey wrench in our policy with China, which, Russia and China are not that way anymore. So all of these things point to the fact that he's Putin's puppet. And we will see. And don't forget, we have Flynn, who was on the payroll of was a lobbyist for the Turkish government, and was the national security advisor. Now we have Turkey and Russia and Iran planning to divide up Syria and make a new country in Syria, and so all of these go against basic U.S. policy. And of course, he's not president yet, but he's already holding up signals that he's going to be as pro-Russian as you can be.
It's obvious. I mean, even his appointing of Tillerson to be Secretary of State, who has a very close relationship with Putin and Russia. And of course, at one time, Manafort was the head of his campaign, who had Russian ties. So, yeah, it's very, very strange, and it does seem as if he's in bed with the Russians somehow.
Somehow.
Now, how that works out in the long run, of course, we don't know.
So it's
I just want to know who's the girl. I'm sorry, that was terrible.
Where is the outrage? Where is the Republican outrage at being in bed with Russia? If a Democrat were in bed with Russia, we would have McCarthy coming out of his grave. We can have Palmer coming out of his grave, and the witch hunts all over again. Even though Russia's not communist, they would say it's communist.
But you know what they would do?
And we'd have the witch hunts. Now nobody. They just.
Wait a minute. They would bring back. They would raise Ronald Reagan from the dead.
Right.
Well, all these issues have been raised, obviously, and raised by the Democrats. Why the Republicans don't care at this point is they're just still basking in this tremendous victory that they had.
But you say
they
that
won
they're
the
raised,
Senate, and they won the House, they won the presidency.
Even though they were raised by the Democrats, my feeling would be, to Mark's example, that you wouldn't be able to turn on a television without seeing an elected official, a Democratic elected official, or a Republican elected official, bemoaning what Hillary Clinton was doing, or any Democrat was doing, in terms of the relationship that he's having with Russia, and the way that he seems to be, there's a bromance at the very least going on between them.
They went nuts when Obama bowed a little bit to the Saudi Arabian guy. The Republicans, you thought their hair was on fire when he bowed.
Well, how about the red line? How about the red line in Syria?
And this guy's in bed with Trump, and nobody. Oh, well, it's just Trump, and they just talking, and Trump. Putin flattered him, so he's flattering Putin. But there's policy here, and there's things that are happening in the Middle East that Putin wants to happen. And we did a whole show about Putin, and before it even happened, Vivienne and I, we kind of predicted what was going to happen in terms of when we did Warm Water, what Putin was in. We did a whole show on Warm Water, and we talked about what Putin wanted, and Putin's getting what he wanted.
He's getting everything.
He's getting
everything. The only good thing about it is that there are Republican senators and Democratic senators that want to have a select committee to investigate what exactly happened and what the influence was of the hacking that was done both to the RNC and to the DNC. And I think that there are Republicans, and by the way, McCain and Lindsey Graham and a few others are on board with that. And I think that's a good sign.
But
so
here's the
it
problem.
will become a topic of discussion.
But here's the problem. Who's going to do the investigation? Is it going to be the Intelligence Committee in the Senate, which is controlled by Republicans, or is it going to be an independent select committee?
And they don't want to
they've even asked for a select committee.
That's why I call him Mitch the Bitch McConnell. I call him Mitch the Bitch. He doesn't want.
He does not want
an independent
committee.
He wants the
committee within Congress.
So once the Republicans control it, they're not going to say anything about, Putin influenced an election of a Republican. So it's there's always a way to kill something. Have a committee. If you don't have an independent committee,
well, I think the Republicans that are asking for the committee
they do
are
want an
more
independent
interested in if they did influence the election, not that it was in favor of Trump, but the fact that they could do that and assail our democratic process, regardless of whether it was a Republican or a Democrat. That's the issue that has to be attacked.
But here's the
not
question.
that he won the election as a result of that.
But the fact is, if he did influence the election, and we don't know that, but if he did, it illegitimatizes Trump's election, and they don't want that. So that's why Mitch McConnell wants a Republican committee to investigate it, not a select committee. You need the same
because you're
kind of
saying
committee.
the interests of the country, they're going to override any determination with what's in the best interest of the country.
I don't really believe that. Do you believe that?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, okay.
I'm just trying to make
believe-
sure.
Well, when Mitch McConnell said the day Obama was elected,
Yes.
that don't care what he does, we're stopping everything he does. We
I
don't want
know
him
he
to
said that,
succeed.
and he did it.
That's not the, and he did it, and
Right.
that's not the interest of the country. That's the interest of the Republican Party and the people that stand for it. So the fact that you're saying that, well, they'll look at Russia.
Well,
as
this goes
the
beyond.
interest of
This goes beyond domestic policy. I mean, this goes into an invasion by a foreign country. I mean, this is different. It's like an attack on us.
Well,
and they're going to handle.
You and I differ because you give them more credit as being patriots and statesmen than I do. I think they're scoundrels, especially Mitch McConnell. I could never forgive him for saying, I don't care what Obama does, we're stopping everything he does. And
I agree that was disgusting. I do agree with
and so therefore I can't. And so therefore, not having the country in mind in that instance, I don't think he would have the country.
See, the
in mind.
interest of the country has to be paramount, and that's the troubling.
I absolutely agree.
That's the troubling, at least for me. As I watch, I am more troubled, not so much by the fact that Trump is the president, that he won. I'm troubled by the fact that the reason that he won seems to be a blatant disregard for the country itself. And I go back to Barry Goldwater being able to go to Richard Nixon and say to him, you got to resign. You can't take the country down with you. I don't think there's a Barry Goldwater in this crowd.
Well, I don't know whether there is or there isn't, but he hasn't done any of these things yet. And when he does, and if he tries, and then we'll see who stands up and who doesn't stand up. So far, in the history of our country, not in the history of the world, but in the history of our country, there have been people that stood up for right, and it's always been worked out in that favor. Sure, there were consequences, wars that happened as a result of it, but in the end, remember we had programs, when are we ever going to learn?
Yes.
Vietnam
Yes.
and Iraq.
Right.
And here along came Obama, and for 8 years, he had a completely different policy than the aggressive policy that Bush had before, and he didn't go to war in Syria over that red line. He used diplomacy.
Right,
and he brought in other countries like Vietnam into
Let
the
me
trade
just throw
policies.
one thing out. Because Trump's talking about having a stimulus package to rebuild the infrastructure.
Right.
Now, Obama proposed that right away.
Sure.
And what would have happened if the Republicans
Had
worked
voted.
along with that? And and employment went up under Obama anyway. We would have had an economic boom. And they wouldn't have got elected this time. I could have run and beat them if we had an economic. So therefore, their whole policy was, we don't care what's good for the country. We want to get the next presidency in our column, and to hell with the country. And that's the problem. There are no statesmen anymore. There are partisan people, and there's some Democrats that are the same way. There are partisan people that could care less about the country. You have people that are in the payroll of foreign governments in our government now. Michael Flynn was a paid lobbyist for Turkey. Manafort was paid by the Ukraine, the dictator of the Ukraine. Tillerson is if Putin probably thinks it's his son.
Yeah.
And how can you have the best interests of our country with these people's interests being in the interest of these foreign adversaries? I'm not saying they're all adversaries.
Yeah, but the first thing that you said there, Mark, before you got into that, was about how they're interested in having this economic boom by introducing the infrastructure and whatever. Well, when Obama came into power, there was no economic boom by the Republicans.
No.
I mean, we were in the worst recession since the Depression. And wait a second, and the economy I mean, I know there were millions of people out there bitching about how the economy didn't help them or didn't help them, but the economy grew 15 million jobs consecutively every month.
But if you listen to
300,000 jobs.
Mitch McConnell, he kept saying, "Where are the jobs?"
Well, that's
Where are the
Mitch
jobs?"
McConnell said
Well,
that, but I'm looking at the facts. The facts were that the economy was in great shape.
I agree
the
with
Democrats didn't play on that, by the way.
I agree
wait a
with you,
minute.
but the point is, if they were statesmen, they would say, you know what, the country's doing good. I don't need to attack him all the time.
Well, you know better than that. I mean,
we're
we're Republicans and Democrats.
Earlier today in the green room, we were talking about the fact that the Republicans deliver a very simplistic message, and it doesn't have to be true. And that was they just keep saying it over and over and over to the point that the public believes it. So all of the increase that you're talking about that happened under President Obama, and now the Republicans come along and they say, oh well, we're going to fund. We're going to put funding into infrastructure projects, and that's going to put people back to work. Could have happened 8 years ago, but there was no statesman to stand up and do it.
Their argument against it was it would increase the debt. Now they're going to reduce taxes for the rich, still have an infrastructure rebuilding stimulus program.
Well, wait till you see what happens when this infrastructure
bill. The debt has gone up. And to Vivienne's point, that the lie, and they keep lying, the debt has gone up under every Republican president. The only time the debt has been even managed was under Clinton and Obama.
And Obama.
So,
Absolutely,
but
I
if
agree
you
with
ask
you.
the average person, what party creates the national debt and what party doesn't, they'll tell you the Democrats, because the Republicans keep.
Well, wait a minute.
But do you think they're going to just automatically pass an infrastructure bill? I don't think they're going to do it. I don't think the Republicans want that to get done, because it is going to increase the deficit tremendously.
I don't
what
think
they're
they
going to
care.
do,
They
they're going to
don't
throw it back to the
Somebody
states or
once
private
said,
companies.
and they were way brighter than I am. Somebody once said the Republicans only care about the national debt when the Democrat is president.
But here's the point, Irv. What happens if the Republicans don't care about debt, which is what history has shown us, that under Republican presidents, that's when the debt goes up. But that's not what people believe. And earlier today, when you were talking about advertising, how about the fact that you have got people walking around here who seriously believe that Donald Trump became president in a landslide vote? I mean, there is just no...
52, we said it, 52% of the people think he won the popular vote.
Yes.
And why is that? Why is that?
Your point.
My point is that the general public, those 52%, and probably a lot of other people who didn't vote and are not part of that, they're very misinformed and ill-informed. They don't read. They don't watch the news. They don't do anything. They listen to those simple headlines that keep getting repeated over and over again on Fox News. If they watch news, they're watching Fox News over and over again, or by those radio hosts, those conservative radio hosts, over and over again, and by the candidates over and over again, saying the same thing, whether it's a lie or whether it's
They
the
just
truth.
repeat
Makes
the
no
lie
difference.
enough. They
stay on message.
I know our audience knows that Trump lost the popular vote, but in case anybody doesn't, I'm going to be like Poppy Bush.
Right.
Read my lips. Donald Trump lost the popular vote.
By how many?
Close to
3 million
Almost
votes.
close to 3
Years
million
ago,
votes.
there was a very good movie, a book written first, by the way,
Yes.
by Jerzy
I love it.
Kaczynski,
Yeah,
and a terrific movie that Peter Sellers starred in called Being There, where he was a gardener in this estate
Chance
in
the
Washington.
Chauncey.
His name was Chauncey. He was Chauncey the gardener. And he never left the estate, stayed in the estate the whole time. And the owner of the estate died, and he was forced out of the estate and into the streets of Washington. And one circumstance here, I don't want to go through the whole movie, but one circumstance over the other, and he became elected president of the United States. He said one thing. Like
Yes.
Donald Trump said one thing.
One simple message.
Donald Trump's message was, we're going to make America great again. And what his statement is, in the spring, there'll be growth.
Right.
And he was a gardener, so that's what he
what he
knew
was
about.
talking about.
He had no idea what that meant in terms of general politics.
Policy.
And because of that, he was elected president. An idiot and moron. But here it is.
Yes.
And it's so... I mean, when he won the presidential primary, I immediately thought of being there.
Yes.
Because he was so ill-informed on all things that anybody who would be running for president would have to know about the Constitution,
And the people didn't
basic
care.
facts and foreign
People
policy.
didn't care.
Life imitates art, and you can go to that movie. You can go to George Orwell, 1984.
Maybe sure, and Manchurian Candidate. We're right there.
Manchurian Candidate. You can go to St. Clair Lewis. You know, It Can't Happen Here,
Right.
when Hitler was, Mussolini.
Yes.
Anne
Hitler.
Ryan. They say this is a.
So it can happen,
Fountain.
and as we said before, we got to be vigilant and make sure that we look at everything that
Okay,
they're doing.
because we do not want to have a Dr. Strangelove scenario.
Right. We don't want to have.
I mean,
There's another.
There's
great
another.
book.
I mean,
Yeah, but no,
But now let's see what we just said.
Okay.
You know, let's just take what we just said about the people being ill-informed, basically uneducated to a certain extent.
yes.
Doesn't the issue of education really become paramount here? Aren't we? Why is that always shuttled into the background? Why can't we have a better system of education so that people, not just in private schools and not just in fancy public schools like
Yes.
Masterman here in Philadelphia and Central and
But how can you
why
have-
can't we have
Yeah,
better
there is.
education, more money?
But they don't want that.
They don't want public
Well, we
education.
do.
And then,
We do.
no,
Who's
they
they?
don't. The very people in power that want to do these
We
things.
don't care about
don't
they.
want
We do.
But they have control. And,
Trump
and
just
if
put-
they don't want to teach evolution, they put in the curriculum in Texas. You can't teach evolution.
Mm-hmm.
If they don't want to teach global warming or climate change, they put you can't teach it in the science class. If they want to,
That's what we have to stand up to, because education is
They
paramount.
didn't want to have Jefferson in the textbook. So then when they and the local school districts in these places control what goes on. I'm a former teacher, and I taught history, and of course Philadelphia's a little different. There were still limits of what I could teach, but the fact of the matter is they brainwash these kids. So education is only going to be good if these kids get the truth, not the same way they lie in terms of political campaigning and political rhetoric. They steer the curriculum, and these kids
It becomes
learn that.
indoctrination.
That's exactly what it is.
Education becomes indoctrination.
Right. Exactly.
And that is a danger that we are facing. And I'm trying to recall the woman that's now Secretary of Education who is connected to the Blackwater guy. She's a
Betsy
sister.
DeVos.
Yeah, DeVos.
DeVos, yes.
And she's all for the voucher system.
She's
and,
for voucher systems.
And she's for
charter
for
schools.
vouchers for
religious schools. For
religious schools.
Right, religious
and
schools.
she doesn't want evolution to it. She wants creativity,
creationism.
creationism to it. She doesn't want global warming to it. Now, when I taught, I try to give the kids both sides of the issue, whatever issue it was in history. And you know what? That was my fault, because while I was doing that, the Republicans, the right-wing conservatives were indoctrinating, as
That's
Vivienne
right.
said. They were indoctrinating the kids. And we liberals, and I consider myself a liberal, tend to try to be fair. They could give a hoot about being fair. They want you to believe what they want to believe. So all these lies that come out, you talked about lying in advertising and all these lies that came out. The deficit is, a big thing. When Obama's president, the Republicans don't care about that. It's just a lie they tell. The history books, they don't mean nothing. We're going to tell you what really happened. And so education is so important, but it has to be unbiased. It has to be, nothing's totally truthful, but it has to be relatively truthful, and it has to be not indoctrination, as Vivienne said.
Well,
Otherwise,
do you
it's
think
useless.
do you think that that's one of the reasons why so many millions of people voted against their own interest when they voted for the Republican
because
Party?
we were saying.
I mean, we're talking about he appealed to
Yes.
the blue collar worker who was a lot of them who've been out of work, who can't find a job. Generally, people who were, he did get some people who were
Well,
educated, but
the
generally people who didn't have a formal education.
But I will say this to you honestly, and this goes to all schools districts, and I worked in a few. They don't really teach the kids what's in their own self-interest. They teach them the American dream. They teach them the ratio algebra stories. If you work hard, keep your nose to the grindstone, you'll get ahead. That's how you get ahead. They don't talk about exploitation of workers, or they don't talk about the minimum wage.
No.
They talk about be like Bill Gates, work real hard, go into your garage, figure something out, you become a millionaire. And that's what they teach. They don't teach the reality, and they don't teach techniques of propaganda. These kids can't recognize a lie from the truth.
They do not know it. But I want to show something out to you because this is just interesting. On December 20th, Sarah Cliff from Vox, and this was reported in the Washington Post. This was reported in the Washington Post on the 20th of December. And she did a study in Whitley County, Kentucky, where the uninsured rate declined 60% under Obamacare. The fact that they had the availability of Obamacare, the uninsured health rate declined 60%. But of that 60%, these people that now have health care that didn't have health care before, 82% of those people voted for Donald Trump. And Donald Trump's, what did he say? We're going to do away with Obamacare. Now, back to this disconnect between people voting against their own interests. Facts don't mean a thing to them.
Well,
They're voting
by the
against,
way, one of the reasons for that is they never thought that they were getting Obamacare when they got the insurance. I mean, nobody told them it was called Obamacare. They were getting insurance.
They were getting insurance.
But it was
okay.
Obamacare, and
Yes.
it had Obama's name on.
Right.
It was really Romney Care.
Exactly.
It was
Well,
the American
precisely.
Heritage Foundation Care.
Exactly.
This is not the health system that we really wanted in place.
No.
We wanted a
We
single-payer
universal.
system.
We wanted universal.
Universal insurance with a single-payer system.
Yes.
That
This
goes
was
back to
this
what
was
I
an
said
American
before.
Heritage
That was their program,
conservative program, but they put
Obama-
Obama's name on it. They're repealing.
Right, exactly. That's
Yes.
exactly. That's why it had nothing to do with.
Now
the
that's going to be an
merits
interesting thing when 25 million people are not going to have insurance anymore. Then how's that going to help everybody else?
Well,
How can they do that?
I want to say something to you guys. This is just a little funny thought that I have, and it's going to be, however it gets picked up, it's going to sound like it's crazy. But my question to you is that based upon the fact that when Obama came into office, this country was in serious financial trouble. There was no question about it. He asked for things that would bring us out. The Republicans decided, no, whatever it is he proposes under Mitch McConnell's leadership, we are going to vote against it, even if it's in our best interest. Then we have these people in this one county in Kentucky who have health care, who didn't have it before, but then they vote for a man who says, I'm going to repeal Obamacare. So I said to our assistant producer, I just happened to be talking, I said, what if the powers to be, the guys that sit around in these rooms smoking their cigars and drinking their iron antiquity, what if they make a decision that, okay, we gave you the black guy, and we gave you the black guy when all of these bad things were happening, but symbolically you got a black guy. Now, how crazy are you Democrats to turn around and think that we're going to give you a woman? I mean, I'm just saying. Now I know that sounds horrible, but
No, it
that's
doesn't.
No,
It doesn't.
listen.
I think the two things you mentioned were paramount. In
It's not
Trump
crazy at
winning.
all.
I think they were paramount. I think people said, "You got your black eye.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
we'll show you now."
Exactly.
And it'll never be a woman. Not now. You
Yeah.
got. You
Well,
got.
you know, there are plenty of men that said that. I mean, first of all, they counted on the Latino vote, and yet all those Latino men with the machismo thing. I mean, they
was
all
all
voted for Trump.
Yes.
I mean,
But-
that was crazy. They were
But
so off base.
52% of white women voted for Trump too, and
Yeah, that's
that
unbelievable
boggles the
too.
mind. And
Well, it boggles the mind when you think about what the plans are and what the Supreme Court, which is back to what we've been talking about all along, what the Supreme Court is going to look
With
like.
abortion and
because
they
Congress
was
want to
defunding
overturn
Planned Parenthood. They wanted-
defunding
Texas
Planned
already
Parenthood.
defunded it yesterday.
Texas defunded.
Yeah.
They defunded Planned Parenthood yesterday.
So they're talking about doing away with a right that women have enjoyed since, 1974. And for all of these women that went out there and voted on behalf of this man, I don't get it. But then I didn't understand when the log cabiners decided that they were going to support Trump. I get it now. It's economic. It did not have to do with anything else. But I guess our job here at Conversations Across Time is to make certain that our audience is at least, we know, first of all, the people that watch us are thinkers. That sounds like snobbery, but it is the case. So that we just need to make certain that they go out and they speak to their friends who are probably not as inclined as they are, as intellectually inclined as they are, to get them to the point where you do and they do what we keep saying for this show. It's not our job.
By the way, it takes a lot of work to spread a
absolutely.
message.
It takes a lot.
I mean, because there are some thinkers out there. There are some people
Yes.
and not everybody thinks alike. And in order to put your point across somehow, it takes a lot of work to do it. And you can't just idly sit by and say, "Oh, I believe in this," and that's it.
No, you gotta.
You have to go out there and you have to work. And the people that
Absolutely.
work for it, they're the ones that really count in this country. So,
And that's our job, because what we do at Conversations Across Time, it's not our job to tell you what to think. It's only our job to make sure you are thinking. That's what we do. That's our premise here. Thank you. This has been Conversations Across Time. Again, not telling you what to think, just making sure you are thinking. Peace. Good night.
Conversations across time. 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 Conversations across time.